Hi everyone, I'm Sylvia Sky. I'm speaking to you from my holistic clinic in North Manchester in England, UK. And as always, I'm approaching very difficult subjects. And today I want to speak to you about what do we feel when we see suffering in others. Most of you would assume that when people see suffering, they would instantly volunteer their help, try to help the other person. But it's not always the case. A lot of the times, people who have suffered trauma, they would try to dissociate themselves from the suffering they're seeing in order to protect themselves. And I want to talk mainly about the difference between pity, compassion, and kindness, because they're associated with different emotions that arise when we see suffering in others. And all of them are completely normal, and we might feel different emotions when we see suffering, and we might transition from one emotion to another, or we might simply get stuck in one particular emotion depending where we are in our in the safety that we feel to react in that particular situation. For example, if you see a bully attacking someone, you might not interfere because you're afraid for your own safety. And then you're going to feel extreme frustration. You're going to feel a sense of profound injustice. You might feel ashamed with yourself for not reacting, or you might continue to feel scared based on what you saw and not necessarily feel guilty or shame that you didn't interact. So lots of different emotions when we see suffering in other. And like I said, a lot of people also feel a sense of dissociation. They don't want anything to do with the suffering that they see because they themselves don't want to connect with that part in themselves. Now, you also might feel, in order to make yourself, give yourself a sense of safety, you might feel pity. Now, pity is not necessarily a kind emotion. It is more, pity pulls in rank. Pity divides and disconnects because it says to the other person or to yourself, you're saying to yourself, I'm better than this. I'm better than the other person. If you see a homeless person or a hungry person or someone who just lost their job or lost their house, you might not immediately feel compassion, because compassion implies that you are there with that suffering. The etymology of compassion means to with suffering, compatic, with suffering. And not all of us feel comfortable, ready, or safe to go to that level of suffering in order to connect with the other person. We cannot connect with the other person if we don't recognize the suffering in our own self, with the idea, I understand how you feel, I've been there myself, or even though I haven't been there myself, I have compassion, I understand that, I'm an empathic person. Now, pity doesn't do that. Pity actually comes from the origin of pious, which means devoted religious state. And religion generally is organized, it has a hierarchy. So pity gives a sense in the culture, the religious culture, mostly the Christian religious culture, gives a sense that I am better than you and I feel pity towards you. Poor you, poor you. When we feel pity, we will try or might not try to help the other person, but not necessarily from an elevated emotion, an elevated state of being. We do not see the other person through the eyes of God. We see the other person as simply below us. We're better than them, and also might give us a sense of superiority to help them or to help us feel better with that emotion, and not necessarily genuinely help the other person. A lot of people give charity out of pity, but also in my research about the origins of words, I discovered that charity means love of the fellow being. So originally it had a very beautiful meaning, but I think charity has been distorted across the time in the cultural usage, maybe in the context of the religious usage. A lot of Christian monks and a lot of Christian figures took vows of poverty, and they did not see riches as something positive or good or something welcome. And we all know that a lot of religions, they they rule by fear, shame, and guilt, and also a lot of high hierarchical figures have access to a lot of riches. So there is a hypocrisy there, and that's why probably across the time charity took on a negative, also a negative slant, and not only the true meaning of love for the fellow being. So pity divides, compassion brings you to the same level of suffering with the other person. So that is a more connecting feeling. But kindness asks, what can I do to help? Because kind comes from the Germanic kinde, which is natural, the natural way of being, and or also the organization that you belong to the same type of species. So I think kindness also recognizes your own, and you would never leave your own behind or your own in suffering. And it's a natural way of being. I think at our best as human beings, we are trying to help the other. We are pulled towards offering our help any way we can. So I like this I like this idea that kindness asks, what can I do to help? Compassion does connect, and you are on the same level, like I said, with the suffering of the other. But if you are in the same vibration where the problem was created, and you stay in that suffering, you cannot pull the other one out. Sometimes when you connect with the other, you don't always necessarily need to take action. You can just sit there in company with that person's suffering, if you feel ready and if you feel you can do that. So not every single situation requires an action, but undoubtedly, if you want to overcome that and offer your help, you can ask, what can I do to help? So a lot of the times when we see other person in suffering, we don't know how to react. We might feel ourselves overwhelmed by different emotions, and I think it's such a useful phrase to use. What can I do to help? Because we don't know, and also what would work for us might not work for the other, and also the other person might not need anything, might just have the opportunity to say, actually nothing, I know that you cannot help me right now, but thank you for caring, thank you for asking. So these are my thoughts at this moment, when there's so much suffering, and we have difficult emotions seeing others in suffering, and see how you feel with these different concepts, and if you yourself feel comfortable asking other people, what can I do to help in difficult situations, rather than storm in and save the other person and offer the other person the opportunity to take charge of their healing, of their well-being, and allow them to express verbally or otherwise what it is that they need and you can do for them. And also check with yourself if you're willing to do what they need you to do, because sometimes the demands of others might put us in a place where we don't want to be. We might be asked to do things that we're not willing to give, to do, or we might not have those kind of resources. Sometimes it's okay to say no, even though, no, I can't help you with this, because you cannot help from a place of lack in the first place. So these are my thoughts today. I hope you are left with some food for thoughts, and I'll see you again next time.